Hello, YouTubers. I weigh this to be a little rappy, but in other words, I am not a lawyer, partially because the the pathway to that you have to entertain. They have our founders' words and our founders' communications replaced. They have uses of their words, tactically altered, other than how they asked them to be appreciated. We're supposed to understand how there was a breaching method entrenched, and there were only permitted roles with it. Otherwise, that body was sensed. And sensing for a hyperforeign breaching method, too, that no one even sensed since before religious messengers who already had the campuses of the republic for which we stand taken apart from where they need to, abridged, criminally foreign influence slash hyper criminally foreign influence. And the hyper criminally foreign influence part, there are proofs that is more practical, and nature showing us that we should all blame together, countries A through Z. A hyperforeign breaching method realized that only locations, areas, and states, everywhere the human species body has a body, they're the only ones that could operate the names of countries. And the ancients had understood that because nature had showed them that. But nature had showed them that before the campuses became criminally foreign influence. So nature showed them a way more. Nature showed them how to cause evolution's fruits and gifts and means out of nowhere, the way nature does. But it shows us the difference between nature as criminal insidiousness, natures of positive out of negatives, or hyper criminally foreign, or hyper positives out of negatives. But no one remembers how to do this. It's not just because it's not defined, because nature itself defines it. Nature itself shows us that there's a difference between criminal insidiousness natures of positives, like criminal insidiousness natures of peace. Forgiveness slash non-forgiveness. It's to not leave out with the syntax of either one, or the difference of that, estimation, value, appreciation of the difference of that. Not to leave out the breaching methods rules originally and still. It started everyone blaming other things, others, ourselves for things that it caused and was sustaining on people. And this is a method still sustained on you guys each. Many Americans, we're in a species body trap, the same one at countries A through Z. But Americans, we all know, through jobs, and the only people for podiums, they're pretending practical reason, to use Immanuel Kant's phrase. But in ways he couldn't, because it's declassified. It's recorded how even Immanuel Kant didn't have free speech. The Constitution stands abridged. See breach. See discern the breaching method. I'm not a lawyer. So I'm not a journalist too, because the journalists and their families are recorded too. How kept self-value collusion /s in defenses of themselves and the reason of being and having been replaced at each age and nature of campus. The principles, treatments that were recorded by the answers our founders left to have us understood, to understand. Like, for example, how and why James Madison is the only founder that they had the security to have the name even declassified for us to know. Plus, it's the only name we need to know because, not just because of Chief, but no, we know all the Native Americans are the kin of our founders. But all our founders did not know about that plan, and they were even fighting amongst themselves. For example, for what our founders declassified, it totally forced the ground below their feet, the waters, access, all denatured, all through systems tactically abridged, slash hyper tactically, because everyone was those tactical roles self-valued, only allowed, only permitted, only fathomed. Otherwise, too, it was the laws forced everyone to pretend to sense anyone not pretending with them. So little kids across the country and their families you know, they would agree. They agree in many ways. See, but we don't agree how to word it, but we have black people as whites of eyes. We discern that there was something here entrenched and that has not gone away. But see, people need to pretend that precedents or statutes and syntax nature with the suits and ties, counters, exceptions. People speaking about, the names of the people of the sciences, therefore the law too. They're worse than criminally incompetent based on this. They were child abused. Black pupils. This is inseparable per nature itself from the subject of slavery. Have we had it inseparable from it? No. Well, it's debatable. You know what shows it's not debatable? James Madison, what he had declassified for himself and for ourselves. They knew that, in other words, people bring up Paine, Thomas Paine, and Common Sense and pamphleteers. See, these are voices in that game, playing that game, where James Madison left declassified about how, in other words, they knew people were going to, no one wanted rules with slavery, but it was only allowed. And it was multi-front against women. It was multi-front against Native Americans, based on the tribe, not based on the religion, the reasons that were known or discerned. Because everything the breaching method does and did, it does and did it through ourselves to keep itself in the future screened, to keep nature's names in the future, needing to prevent what was actually recorded in the past from being discerned and appreciated properly here in the present. It is only increasing value. How having black pupils, whites of eyes projected by the identity of nature itself is inseparable from how a breaching method reassigned what black people's whites of eyes communicate by and for nature, when nature is not only itself as criminal insidious in its nature. I am not a lawyer, but they are immature and they have roles. They have collusion / the intelligence agencies and former director of the FBI with a person directly and indirectly who used the word. Even if that wasn't the same person, and even though there's more than one person with that name, who used the word immature. Now, I recorded you guys between the campuses, building upon predicate acts with facts method / sustained upon the kids, sustained upon the elderly homes with the families there. How really they have the little bit of time in front of presidents, then they go back to their elderly homes roles. With probate court judges, our criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought with other branches of government, with their family members too. All kinds of natures of identity, theft, fraud, slanders. It is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There have been people that have been pretending they have ties to me, to my family, and people that know me that since I was a kid that I don't know. And there are ties between that. And they're not going to be honest about it. And that's, in other words, that's recorded. The news, Channel 3 News stole me to fake conversations with themselves and with others to hide all kinds of life progressions. These are people years before the World Trade Center attack and shortly before it, interstates and internationally. They have collusions with people at the World Trade Center and next to it, including at all locations / are those collusions. This breaching method has self-value collusion / with what it costs and keeps, like overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists. At the same time, with witch trials, courts, even if that was made up, why there's a witch trials place next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. No one has spoken properly about how to do this. And, the people have excuses certain ways, but we aren't allowed to use them. And the leaders have excuses certain ways, but they aren't allowed to use them. This breaching method is against every individual voice. No matter how powerful a leader could become, as long as they're over locations, areas, and states with criminally foreign influence slash hypercriminally foreign influence, campuses, fact, human nature, quality aspects of nature, but that or collusions with the location first, though. You have to understand it that way. Because those are hyper additional collusions plural. And then right back at, and this is recorded. People get away with, oh, that person's thing, and they change and fake what people are saying. I asked you guys many times to get me off of fake conversations about the World Trade Center attack with Channel 3 News. They have people from Saudi Arabia, I don't even know their names. A guy. And I believe that was Saudi Arabia. It could have been Kuwait, but in other words, anyway, they have Saudi Arabia and the other campuses. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, is recorded involved with Wethersfield police. They have an older one. I believe they're brothers, reportedly. An older Mendez police brother and a younger one. And the older one, I never had a word of conversation in my life. I never had a class with either one of them. One time, once or twice, the older one walked by me and smiled. I never had and someone else told me about him. I don't even know who said it. Someone from behind me. They make you go to they're stacking databases at the campuses with predicate acts with facts per method /s, as shown needs and means to. Increasingly, people at Trinity College, students and adults, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, adults at and next to the place. And I'm referring to it as adults because of their syntax with immature, with Ray Collo, who's one of the ones with a whole bunch of people at Harvard Hospital and the Institute of Living, involved with a bunch of doctors, foreign and domestic, who have been faking transcripts still with the news and with the same house, and with a Phil Collo and a Joshua Julian, further with Facebook, the leaders of Facebook, people that, in other words, all sides of cases associated with that, and all sides of cases interstates with the same ones involved with the court next to the World Trade Center, a proven sequence shift from inside the court. No one will allow people to speak about things honestly. And I saw in a YouTube short video the other day. It was like real fast. It wasn't clear. It was I believe it was in other words, it said that there was a guy that was around the outside of the World Trade Center attack before the World Trade Center attack. And then he was at the Charlie Kirk assassination or reported assassination. Not to say it didn't happen, but I'm saying it that way because they change everything, fake things, hide things, obfuscate things, and the relativity of it being having been the day before the World Trade Center attack. Wethersfield police have predicate acts every year since the World Trade Center attack, collusions intercities with a bunch of names. And they have a bunch of people that have been putting fake conversations with me, fake ties, fake nature of ties to me since I was a kid. As their collusions a whole bunch of ways, directly and indirectly, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, also with victims advocates of the Britain's Superior Court, and with other courts involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and military next to the state capitol, and their roles with the intelligence next to the state capitol, and conjunctions to it and to that, is one of the things that ties a whole bunch of people that I've never even seen on my street, who have collusions with people from other areas who planted evidence on my street, and with the ones with the interbranch forging and switching names of Connecticut, as the ones with their cousins, per them being their cousin, the name Scalora. One's named Scalora and a whole bunch of other people at the World Trade Center and next to it, including the court at it, with the court with the proven afterwards sequence shift from inside the court, insidiously had presented the court timely stamped legal papers that they changed insidiously the date of to make them look as if they'd been handed in late to the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center towers the morning of the attack. I was in there as an observer, and I recorded I recorded, because people confessed, recorded, kind of confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, Harper Courts and the Britain Superior Court and their families and intimate ties have roles with foreign and domestic military and people from Wethersfield intercities who are also at West Harper locations and New Britain locations and associated with leaders of the kids and the kids of the leader of the kids, where they make where their influence, where all natures of investigations investigated are being and have been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw. They also are used that way, shown needs and means by a breaching method to run in and hide live progressions, by using all natures of crime scenes and all counters and all that subsequently is connected to that, like even triages. Triages have collusions with overt criminal enterprises, plural, and with private ones at and next to their locations, with the houses and businesses next to Harper Hospitals, has an Institute of Living founded on their campus in 1822. With slavery and trade still entrenched in northern colonies and southern colonies. And that was entrenched because of the breaching method that James Madison declassified about. But they have James Madison's communications replaced, and they have measured and they are being used to sense for the breaching method when they have passions behind the common sense in the pamphleteers and Thomas Paine. James Madison declassified about how they had roles even with all those crazy things that no one wanted to all come out of it, because if they brought it up in the subject, there were internationally monitored conversations. And there were overt criminal enterprises, with their sense and sensibilities and rules that were on and off the record, tactical military, from how they were pretending and capable of, in other words, the differences of guilt were employed by the hyperforeign, that which had sickly distinctly the northern colonies and the southern colonies, sickly distinctly through different countries, sickly distinctly through different international companies that didn't get along with themselves. And in other words, in the countries, when did anyone get along with themselves? Except as a fake collusion tool, replacing black people's whites of eyes. Ye fool, ye species body, stay not this, that way. Ye many pray, boxings, here through. In other words, so get me off the fake conversations with the Wethersfield police. At the same time, the Britain Superior Court and Harper Courts have roles switching names and forging names. They have an officer Hunter, that might not be his real name though. He's involved with Harper Courts people, a girl, Emily or Amy, she switches names, but not just her. Also, she has confessions about roles with putting digital, going onto a site that it's against the law to go onto on people's computers, and other people with that, with intercities involved with Harper Courts and the Britain Superior Court, and people with involved with the spots intelligence at and next to the networks like WFSB, Channel 3 News in Rocky Hill. They increasingly recorded, confess, demonstrate from they have a Roger Susanna who's involved with them with predicate acts with facts methods and all kinds of natures of organized crime methods and organized crimes next to all natures of crime scenes, including with their interbranch families. They have all and their roles with use/s of names all along Route 3 and conjunctions to it and to that. I only know an Eric Oliveri has been trying to have his picture taken around me or whatever. I never tried to contact him in my life. He sought me out to make all kinds of confessions, demonstration confirmed. He has collusions also with people at Trinity College with a Joshua Stryker. I never had a word of conversation in my life with a Joshua Stryker. I never went anywhere with him. One time I went to Eric Oliveri's house. He asked me to go there. He called me to go there. And he wanted me to sell drugs through UPS. It has something to do also with other people who a guy who said he was arrested for that. Even made it up. Oh, we have the right to lie. They jump in and say that thing. They confess that other than they could afford to do. on Facebook. On Facebook, things were confirmed to me, including roles with relative body dumping spots, murders, untimely deaths that intercities have connections, and confessions at the same time that were brought up. That's why I didn't say anything right away about the sequence shift and other things recorded not and confessed them and confirmed non-verbally by a little coward, Joshua Stryker. I never had a word of conversation in my life, too. I don't know all their names. They know mine. He's been planting evidences between campuses, also with some sexual and medical offenders of kids already proven and more recorded. And then this is interstates, too, and international. That's why we have problems with borders, because they have been using differences, their own differences and other people's differences to pretend passions and emotions. Oh, because we perceive racism. Oh, because we perceive counter to it. Oh, in other words, they got men and women. In other words, they're just sustaining too the sexual theme, and they're going to put them in the bathroom with the girls. They could have put them with their own bathroom by now, too. All the money they waste, and they have collusion /S with the phones, all kinds of organized crimes with the phone, fake phone transcripts, all kinds of lack of integrity of the security with the campuses. Sandy Hook, the FBI, when they're out of their minds, pretend they need to pretend they have integrity. When did they have integrity, black pupils? Get them on paper, one name and sequence. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. We're going to examine his worse than criminal incompetence, speaking for the law. Black pupils, pair, get them on paper, one name and sequence. They forge names, switch names into cities, into branch. They're refusing to identify themselves legitimately. Get me off the fake conversations with this Leahy family and the others at Hartford Hospital too. And then the ones I have like barely any words with, I could repeat the same thing. Then God knows what they put in there. Watch the fake things they put through the mail, but they won't communicate to me though. In other words, I've been asking you guys for years. You guys have big problems now. In other words, and our whole country does, because you guys are little fake punks. The whole world does, because you have little fake punks there too. Fake side, being not one as a side. You guys are sides tactical terror from how we are the human species body of individual bodies, per what is generating all group differences, and or it demonstrates to us when we are using systems other than its own. That's science. That's relativity /hyper relativity that we could discern. But we have a whole bunch of theories and tactically delusions wrought science's voices in our way. Follow many pray. Follow mandated law. Get them off the fake conversation with me, please. Judge Napolitano, do what's right. I was in the World Trade Center context next to it, not you. In other words, and they're lying to you if they're changing what, faking, hiding what I say, obfuscating it. That's obstruction of justice. They need to offensively pretend that people need faith in them. The FBI can't be trusted. They have roles with Wethersfield police. They're hiding what's recorded over the phones. They can't be trusted. I wouldn't go there and speak with them now. We're going to do it out here, because we only need it right here. And you have a whole bunch of people from Ukraine and Russia involved too. And with military, with the people. There's a Justin Klovinskis is involved too, with a Fred Grisey and other people that I never didn't even go to my schools. I never saw them on a campus I went to in my life. I didn't even, in other words, and they're putting fake things in databases. They have something to do with a Kevin Harris and people next to a school I went one year. A person with apparently his mother worked there, and I was in kindergarten. In other words, there are loads of people involved with the World Trade Center attack with names next to it, involved with military. In other words, fear God, and their roles with town lines. I shouldn't have to beg to get them on paper. Get me up for a big conversation with the police when I was at the police station too. That wasn't at all when I was a kid and I was an adult. And then they had to hide live aggressions by pretending that with WFSB. Whole bunch of natures of organized crime in the same little stories. They have a sick guy named Roger Suzanne playing games too. Then they bring their family members in with the courts too, doing that, putting fake motivations, repeating fake things. In other words, they're incapable of what's actually having discerned what's actually recorded. Get them on paper, one name and sequence. Get them on paper now. There are more people involved with violence too, weapons and poisons, and threats and things like that tied to the murders, confessions, untimely deaths. Untimely death rolls, intercities connected. One at Trinity College are the ones with this Robert Rodriguez who brought up the principal child abusers campus, and the ones tied to this, as one of the ones directly and indirectly tied to this, Joshua Stryker and a Joshua Julian involved with intelligence families, playing their sensibilities. Then they pretend, oh, you were saying this about us. No, I don't even know them. These are intelligence families associated with them. Their sense and sensibilities around everyone next to them. This is a breaching method that shows them have to hide live aggressions, intercities. That's why they intercities. Time where I'm going to go. Yeah, the only time I ever saw the Robert Rodriguez on my street. First time I didn't even respond to him. The second time I didn't respond to it either. Then he confirmed what he was trying to say, what he said, what he confessed about his roles with his wife with the untimely death. These are people with the counters to the borders, with the border states and countries, involved with Central Connecticut State University, involved with Trinity College, UConn, Quinnipiac University, has all kinds of organized crimes, with sexual and medical offenders of kids involved with multiple courts. A Rick C. and Faglione said a Leahy family and a Brian Silver. Brian Silver is one of the ones involved with District Court of Connecticut with a Thaddeus Grabowski, with people next to Fox Connecticut News, who are also in Hartford, Connecticut, who are also on Two-Rod Highway, Hangdog Lane, increasingly in conjunctions to it and to that, increasingly wire crime acts and methods, and roles of predicate acts with facts methods, and abuses of little kids, elderly, and middle-aged, multi-front. Now, these are simple things. Now I want to speak about them. You guys are obstructing my evidences and stealing my identity to prevent any writing proper. This is also relative to where and to how and to why. Even though things are declassified, we have them replaced or pasted. They have the plan of James Madison, where it is the only correct answer for what caused the Declaration of Independence, for example, the Constitutional Convention, even the Civil War. James Madison's plan is the only thing that made that possible, to make the North and the South fight against slavery. And it was against the laws to go against any part of those things, not just by the internationally monitored conversations that measure everyone an extent of syntactical collusion / us against themselves and everyone else. Otherwise, they were sent by themselves and everyone else, because they didn't even understand how the breaching method works. They had such crazy things at once, multi-front against every human difference, because nature uses every difference. This breaching method knew that nature would be demonstrating to humanity. A human fact cheating nature breaching method is one of the things that all these crazy laws are about at the same time. It also knew that nature would contain with those demonstrations of itself. A human fact cheating nature breaching method is responsible for this. So what it did is employed nature's negative value, the real causes of it, like how and why the oceans polluted, how and why really we're drinking out of plastic bottles of water, how and why really we're shocking off because we hear people in Michigan have lead in their pipes. They don't know what to do. Oh, we're going to go speak about the money. In other words, get them on paper, one name and sequence. Get me off a big conversation with the World Trade Center attack, with the interstates involved, with the 4 and 2, the same ones involved. In other words, a whole bunch of people with the name Scalora involved with police confessions on my street, pretending it's not a confession. And I didn't respond to them. Get them on paper, one name and sequence. Get them on paper. Get them on paper. Get them on paper. Please, Judge Napolitano, do what's right. I don't have to follow mandated law.